Heather. I just want to say how much I love the sound of children crying, and it's the most welcome sound here. We always love to have it in our room, and it's lovely to think we got 5 children downstairs in the Sunday school, so I'm really delighted, and thank everybody who's brought their children to Sunday school. It makes such a difference to us, and we just want to affirm that we welcome both children and the noise they make in our services, so that's fantastic. So, listen, we are doing we've been doing this series on the 10 Oxherding pictures, and I see some of you haven't been for a while, so I'm just going to do a little bit of deep. The 10 Oxherding pictures are a series of pictures with poetry that describe the stages of enlightenment, or the stages one goes through in the spiritual life. And they're Zen pictures. They were written about 1,000 years ago. We're not actually studying Zen here, but we're using the pictures just to look at the nature of our reality and where we are. There are different ways. Here's another one there. There's a different type of picture. Over the generations, different people have painted them. There's another one up there you can look at after the service as to how they're painted. But in each one, there are similar ways of expressing the way that the spiritual life unfolds over the years. And we are now at number 7. But if you want to open your sheets, it'll just give you an idea of where we are. We started with number 1. And number 1 really is called searching for the ox. And that's when you're in your life. You've got, no cares or worries. You're sort of doing what you do. You're going on your career. All the fun and games of life. And you think, you're just living. There's a chaos around you. But maybe there's just a slight feeling that there's something missing inside you. And that prompts you to think, what else could there be in life? That's that first stage. And then the second stage is noticing the traces. And in noticing the traces, it's like you maybe read a book or someone tells you something, you see a film, and you suddenly think, well, maybe there is a little bit more, to life than this. You might read The Alchemist or whatever it is, and you start to look and you start to think, you think, well, I'll go to a seminar or I'll go to a talk or whatever it is, and then you start to notice the traces, notice that there is something, and maybe you start a practice, maybe you start meditation, maybe you go on a long retreat or whatever it is. So that's noticing the traces, and then the third one, seeing the ox. And then suddenly, through your meditation or something, what it is, you suddenly get a revelation. It may be out in nature, you go, wow! Or whatever it is prompts you, and you suddenly get a sense of, hey, there is something here. You see into the nature of things. And in this whole idea, we're the ox herd, the bloke going along, doing all this, and the ox that he's looking for is our true nature. Could be God, could be the meaning of life. It's the essence of who we are. So he's looking for, and he suddenly gets a sense of it, and he sees it. And that is like falling in love spiritually. You see your true nature, you think, wow. When you fall in love, you think, well, I'll invite her out again. I think I'm going to do more. But when, you think, well, I'm going to start, process of meditation, blah, 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 and you really get into the whole spiritual thing. And then you catch the ox, and what that means is you commit to, the whole journey, the spiritual journey. You're serious about it. You're sort of struggling because you're still maybe going out to parties and your life's taking you in different directions. You still find yourself getting cross with your children. You haven't really transformed a huge amount. But through practice, the next stage is the herding the ox. And the herding the ox is when, your practice has really made a difference. And there's a sort of calmness that you're able to, all of us still, break out of this, but there's a calmness that is there within you. You don't necessarily shout at the driver as they cut you up anymore. You just know that you're more aware that your mind is trying to take you somewhere else. And you can observe your mind. And so there's something within you that is connecting to a basic calmness. And that basic calmness, then coming home on the ox. And by then, in coming home on the ox, you don't really need to worry too much because you've done your meditation. You can sort of dance the light fantastic. Law doesn't really matter to you. You're spiritually, you're singing, you're enjoying things. There's a sense that you and the spiritual life are one. You've got to that point whereby people go, what's up? He's changed a bit. Or, there's a definite sense of joy coming out of you at that particular point as you really enjoy the spiritual element of your life. And that's the connection to joy. And so we're now at number 7, which is where we're at today. So I've caught you up as to where we are. We're at number 7, which is the ox forgotten, leaving the man alone. And that's what we're here to look at now. The ox forgotten, leaving the man alone. And I always would just want to read out the little poem. The dharmas, that's all the things that happen in life, are one. And the ox is symbolic. When you know that what you need is not the snare or the set net, but the hare or the fish, it is like gold separated from dross. It is like the moon rising out of the clouds. The one ray of light, serene and penetrating, shines even before the days of creation. Riding on the animal, he is at last back in his home, where lo, the ox is no more. The man sits alone serenely. Though the red sun is high up in the sky, he is still quietly dreaming. Under a straw-thatched roof are his whip and his rope idly. So he's not doing any work. And there is an oral tradition of the 10 Oxherding Pictures that says that this one is the last state that you get to. And that the next 3 are a description of the experience of that last state that we're in. So there's an arrival point, and we'll look at those in the next 3 weeks, but there's an arrival point that happens at this moment in the experience. And I think the telling line here is when you know that what you need is not the snare or the set net, but the hare or the fish. We're not essentially interested in the techniques, in the spiritual techniques that are given to us to find our true nature. Because, techniques are just techniques. They're not the real thing. What we're interested in is the real thing, which is the experience of the true nature. And when you have the real thing, you don't need the techniques. Just as you don't need the fishing line once you've got the fish. Or you don't need the trap once you've got the hare. You've got the hare, you've got the fish, so you don't need that. Now, religions don't like this because their whole trade is in telling you that you need them for the truth. You need religions for the truth. You need the church to get to God. Buddhism will show you the way, or follow the ways of the prophet. All religions are guides to get you to the point where they are no longer needed, or they should be. They should have an obsolescence built into them. But in most cases, they don't take too kindly to you saying to them, thanks very much. I've got it now. I'll take it from here. I've got the picture. I don't really need your help from now on. What arrogance, they say. How does he know? We'll see about that. Excommunication for you. It's just not on to say, thanks very much. I've taken you all the way. The problem is really, and And actually, I see my job here as actually, you are in the driving seat in your spiritual life. I'm not in the driving seat. You're in the driving seat. And all I can do is put up stuff that enables you to think, I might turn left here or right there. But you're in the driving seat. The problem is that religions are essentially dualistic. There is a this and a that. And this stage is about non-dualism. About this being that and about that being this. That non-dualism. Non-dualism is the idea that actually there is a one, there is a whole, it is the not two. That all is of a one. That the experience is of a one. That the universe is of a one. That I am as a one with you. That essentially we are all engaging in the same consciousness, in the same place, at the same time. Dualism, non-dualism, is not about God and man as being separate. It's not about flesh and spirit. It is about an essential oneness of all. Very short guru story. The guru was asked, what shall we do about others? And the guru answered, there are no others. There are no others. There is just us. There is just the we. There is just we are in a land of no others. There is no saints and sinners. And there is no one to convert. There is no us and them. But we live in a dualistic world where we're here and out there is out there. And that dualistic world, that separation, is ultimately set up by the mind, by our minds, as a way of surviving. That's why it's there. It's there so we survive. If we do not fear the hairy mammoth as it's coming our way, if we say, it's okay, you're a part of me and I'm a part of you, if we don't fear, we're dead. Because the hairy mammoth is not a philosopher. The hairy mammoth is a consumer of us. Well, I don't know if they're herbivores or whatever, but you get the point. The wild animal is a consumer of us. So, in order to survive, we make ourselves separate. And that separation cashes out and takes many forms. We make ourselves separate from our environment. There's me here and there's everything out there. We're separate from our environment. We make ourselves separate from God. In the extreme example, here I am and God is up there in the sky or, wherever it is. But we do make ourselves, oh God, please, we make ourselves separate from God. And do you know what else we do? We separate our minds from our bodies even. We separate our minds from our bodies. And again, we separate our bodies from our souls. We think of it as separate. Mind, body, souls, all separate. That separateness that we have makes us draw distinctions. God good, man bad. We draw those distinctions. Soul good, body bad. Even mind bad, heart good. And so we get ever more contorted problems and solutions to try and get round the separation. If the soul is good, Christians say, in a lot of cases, the body is bad. If the soul is good but the body is bad, therefore our sexuality is dangerous. If the soul is good and the body is bad, our sexuality is dangerous. We mistrust the bad urges of our body. So let us subjugate our bodies. Fasting, celibacy, restraining the urges, Let us have a noble shame about our bodies. That's the sort of general direction this goes in. Like Adam in the Garden of Eden. Who told you you were naked? God says. Who told you you were naked? And you know, the way we treat our bodies is mirrored in the way we treat the world. It's another form of separation. The way we treat our bodies is mirrored in the way we treat our world. The world, like our body, is out of control, chaotic, and we must subjugate it. We must subjugate the savages and enslave them. We must convert the heathen. We must order the environment to our needs. We must repress those who disagree with us with our idea of order. Just look at Iran. You can see in that situation the separation of the mind and the body, not being able to show the body, the repression that's going on. And so the mind seeks to make good what in the body or in the world it thinks of as bad. Who told you you were naked? But then the enlightened ones come along and say, no, the mind is the bad one. Let us flee from our minds and into our hearts. Let us live in the goodness of our souls where the mind cannot harm us. Then we can be one with the universe. But again, that's just another form of dualism, of separating one from the other. Who told you you were naked? There's that great thing in the Gospel of Thomas, the Logian 22. Jesus saw infants being suckled. He says to his disciples, these infants being suckled are like those entering the kingdom of heaven. They said to him, shall we then as children enter the kingdom of heaven? Jesus said to them, and this is in the Gospel of Thomas, and it's just a description of dualism. When you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the above like the below, and when you make the male and the female one and the same, so that the male may not be male nor the female female, and when you fashion eyes in the place of the eye, in the one place, and a hand in place of a hand, and a foot in place of a foot, and a likeness in place of a likeness, then you will enter the kingdom of heaven. It's such an interesting statement of non-dualism in something that was written so many years ago. When you make the two one, the inside like the outside like the inside, the above like the below, when you make the male and the female one and the same. Interesting that, isn't it, in these days? When you make the male and the female one and the same, so that the male is not the male or female the female, the whole thing, then you'll enter the kingdom of heaven. Because the kingdom, or this state of awareness, it says in the poem, is like gold separated from dross. Once gold has been separated from ore, it will remain gold for eternity. It is the eternal nature of that ground of being that is being talked about. When you've actually got through it all, when you separate gold from the ore, it never goes back to ore. It always remains gold. The divine nature was and is always here. Like the glasses on your nose when you've been looking for them. The moon may have hid behind the clouds, but it has never gone away. This stage is the realization of the eternal nature of all things. The ox has been a metaphor. Once we arrive at the real thing, the ox is no longer needed. So the ox disappears completely from the picture, and the boy and the nature are one. Now, even the concept of Buddha nature is superfluous. Even the concept of Buddha nature is superfluous. There's nothing to seek. At this stage, the guru says, when I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm tired, I take a nap. That is the living of the guru. This is my favorite picture, I have to say. And actually, when I wrote, this is an ad again, when I wrote my book, Developing Consciousness, I put a version of this picture on the front of the book. Actually, I must tell you the story. I was in Norwich at the time, and I went to an exhibition of Chinese calligraphy. And there was this bloke there, Chinese bloke, who was drawing, I don't know if you've seen these drawings of fish they do, paintings of fish. And he drew these amazing pictures of fish. And I thought, this guy is fantastic, I love this. And I thought, well, what I'll do is get him to paint my version of this, so I could put this on the front of my book. So I went up to him and with a fistload of £10 notes or whatever it is, and said, look, will you do this for me? He said, oh, sure, I'll do it, So he agreed to do it. So 2 weeks later, he was flying back to China, sort of the next day after I visited him. He came back and he produced this, which is on the front, which is pretty similar. You've got the yin and the yang, but it's pretty similar. There's not a huge amount of difference. This is just a story. This is not very relevant. So anyway, I thought that, okay, that's fine. I went on holiday, and I was on holiday, and I looked at it, and I thought, this is too similar. I thought there's going to be copyright issues on this. So I had to write to the people that own the copyright of this and say, look, I know this is very similar. Do you mind if I use it for my book? Luckily, they were terribly generous. Tuttle is the company. It'll advert for them. They just wrote to me and said, yeah, you can use it. Doesn't really matter. So I used it for the book, and that's how it's always got a place in my heart, this picture of these ones. So here we have the boy at his home, alone. Or he's getting to a man now, and he's completely content. He is one with his nature, and there is nowhere to go. And it reminds me of that stanza from the Tao Te Ching. And I love this one. Without opening your door, you can open your heart to the world. Without looking out of your window, you can see the essence of the Tao. The more you know, the less you understand. The master arrives without leaving, sees the light without looking, and achieves without doing a thing. And I think that really perfectly describes this stage. There is an understanding that everything is completely interconnected, that merely by being where we are right now, you are in connection with all things, all places, all experiences. There's nowhere to go. Without opening your door, you can open your heart to the world. There is a fundamental interconnectivity with all things. And when I flit into this, in my own mind, I find the idea of travel futile. I know my wife Heather likes to travel, so she's like, oh no, we're not going to go anywhere now. I find the idea of travel futile. It's just like the same stuff in different shapes and colors. The essence of all is within, and therefore there's no need to go anywhere to connect to anything. It is the essence of the ground of all being that's the true vitality in life. Not the changing of the cherry blossoms in Kyoto. That's not it. Or even the hanging gardens of Babylon, or the most sacred, the Grand Canyon. It's all the same. No! You can hear the mind in this. The mind hates this. No! Let me differentiate. It wants so badly. Because it then puts it in control. Yes, I quite understand. So all these things are infinitesimally irrelevant and uninteresting compared to the enormity of infinity. Compared to the enormity of the infinity that exists within the potentiality of the present moment. the enormity of the infinity that exists within the potentiality of the present moment. That we haven't even scraped the surface of in the evolution of our consciousness as humanity. It is here, this is the exploration. This is where the evolution of consciousness, this is where evolution happens from now on. It is in here. And if you look around, evolution is not going to happen anywhere else unless there is an evolution of consciousness in the way that I'm talking about, because there will be no person or people to actually do that. It happens here in the present moment. When we get to this stage, there is nowhere to go. There is nowhere to go. So we might as well go nowhere. And going nowhere is what this is about. We're going into nowhere. We're going into nothing. This is the exploration. This is the equivalent of exploring the dark continent in the 19th century, where nobody had explored before. This is what this is about now. This is where the exploration takes place, into the experience of consciousness. And we've not even scraped the beginning of that. And yes, the more you know, the less you understand. Mind wants to understand. The more you know, though, the less you understand. We therefore arrive without leaving. We see the light without looking, and we achieve without doing, because we are fundamentally connected to the essence of all life. And we know that that essence is in control, and we are there to allow and to bear witness to that. That lovely little gobbet from Thomas Merton, which I've used many times, but it just describes this. He says, God utters me like a word containing a partial thought of himself. God utters me like a word containing a partial thought of himself. A word will never be able to comprehend the voice that utters it. But if I'm true to the concept that God utters in me, if I'm true to the thought of him that I was meant to embody, I shall be full of his actuality and find him everywhere in myself and find myself nowhere. I shall be lost in him. That is, I shall find myself. I shall be saved. And this also perfectly captures the essence of this picture. The one ray of light, serene and penetrating, shines even before the days of creation. We're not asked to understand it, or even understand why we don't understand it. We're not even asked to understand that. We're asked just to be it. We're asked to say, so be it. And that is what the boy is saying here. There is a let it be about what's happening. As Mary said to the angel when she was told at the Annunciation that she was going to give birth, Mary says, I am the Lord's servant. Let it be to me as you have said. And then the angel left her. There is complete contentment in all circumstances that come our way.